Hello everyone. In this video, I'll be talking about RedHat Ansible Lightspeed with IBM WatsonX Code Assistant. This is part one of the demo, where I'll be covering overview, installation, feature sets, and demo. But before we dive in, a quick disclaimer. This video is for educational purposes and completely based upon my personal experience and isn't affiliated with any company. Do your own research, investigation, risk, cost benefit analysis to come to any conclusion. This is simply my way of sharing knowledge with the community. Having said that, let's move on to the agenda. I'll be a little bit talking about what is Lightspeed and what's the next code assistant. Then I'll walk you through the installation procedures, and then we'll talk about high level on the feature set. And along with the feature set, I'll also show you some reference links and demos, which can help you understand this tool a little better. So, as you all know, there is a flood of AI code assistants out there. Most of them wrappers on top of OpenAI. On the surface, they look pretty good. But when you start going into complex problems and measuring the accuracy of a very specific use case, they are really not very enterprise grade products. I mean, as an enterprise, you would be interested in solving your very specific problem. For that, LLM may not be doing the right job, or you need a little bit more fine tuning of those LLM to get the right result for your use case. That's where I'll be presenting multiple demos. And today's demo is about Lightspeed. And my intent is to provide a technical review from my eyes. We'll be sharing where they win, where tools like these win, and where they lag behind. Having said that, what is Lightspeed? I'm pasting an excerpt directly from the Red Hat website. They call it like a generative AI service designed by and for Ansible platform engineers and developers. It accepts natural language prompt entered by a user and then interacts with IBM WatsonX foundation models to produce core recommendation built on Ansible best practices. In other words, or my words, I would say, imagine just telling your system what you want and voila, automation code appears. And no, it's not a magic, it's AI. So let me open this website also from where I got this excerpt. This is the Lightspeed homepage. You can browse through it. There's a lot of useful information here, so which can help you. Moving on. So let's talk about installation. You will need three components. First is the VS Code, which I'm sure most of you must be already familiar with, or at least heard about it. You can download that from this link. You need a minimum version of 1.70.1. So if I open it here, it's available in multiple, it's available on multiple platforms, Windows, Mac, and Linux. For this demo, I'll be using Windows. Then you also need Ansible language support extension, which will enable your VS Code to talk to the Lightspeed service. And here you need version 2.8 or later. And there is a pretty good documentation available from Red Hat, which shows how you can configure this extension on VS Code. There's a step-by-step procedure, and after installation, it also talks about how to configure that along with a screenshot. So which was very helpful for me. Then the last piece which you need is either a paid subscription of Ansible Automation Platform, or if you don't have a paid subscription, you can always order a 60-day trial from their website. And you click that link, you'll reach here. Once you click this, I already have a trial running, so it won't show me the actual form. But when you click on it, it's just going to ask your basic information, your account name, password, your address, your company profile, and whatnot. And then you'll get a license key, where you can start using this trial. Now let me walk you through the configuration piece of it. So when you go back to the extensions, you will see this settings icon here. You can click it from here, manage button, or you can click it from here. Right, go to the extension settings. Open this. Now, main things which you need to do is configure is basically go to this tab of Ansible Lightspeed. Make sure you have this URL configured and the Ansible Lightspeed plugin is enabled. And also this option enable Ansible Lightspeed with WatsonX Code Assistant inline suggestions. In addition to that, there is another feature called Model ID Override. This one I'll be covering in the part 2 of the demo, where it allows you to update a model based upon your group. Meaning, if you don't do this, you'll be actually using the default models which are provided by IBM behind the scene. But it also gives you a way to customize those models for different use cases or different groups. Maybe a model can be customized for infrastructure automation versus maybe an application automation. We'll talk about that in the subsequent demo. Now, before we deep dive into the actual demo and actual generation, I'll walk you through features, and side by side, I'm going to start showing those features, how they are basically leveraged in this plugin. Let's spend a little bit time on high-level architecture, as it is always good to understand how the data is flowing in the network for any particular use case, and specifically in these AI use cases, so that you can make sure it is following all the guidelines which your company has put in place. This whole solution is a combination of two different products. One coming from Red Hat, which is called Lightspeed. This is the front-end service which end users interact with using the code editors like VS Code. This service behind the scene works with WatsonX Code Assistant, which is a product from IBM, which is also a parent company of Red Hat. Both these products are available in on-prem version as well as the cloud version. Both of them come with a trial which you can order. Let's dive into the feature sets. Lightspeed uses Ansible-specific IBM WatsonX Granite model, unique to your organization, which are provided, managed, and maintained by IBM. It currently supports two models, Granite 3B, which is a smaller model, but specifically trained for Ansible, and it is available on-prem. They also have Granite 20B, which is bigger model and extremely powerful. But on the flip side, it is not yet available on-prem. So for companies who have policies of not sending the data outside their data center, this is a complete showstopper. I believe IBM has it in its roadmap to release within the next couple of quarters. I hope it happens a little bit earlier than that. I'll actually open their website, which talks about all their foundation models. So if you notice here, there are a bunch of models here, 5 different categories of models. So what I am referring to is the Granite code models, and which ranges from 3 billion parameters to 34 billion parameters. And for this Lightspeed, they specifically use model 3B and 20B. And like I was saying, 3B is available on-prem and 20B is available on cloud. And they have bigger model also, which is trained for 116 programming languages, which is, I believe, in the tech preview, should be coming out soon. Next up is their most powerful feature, I would say, which this assistant is offering, is the full playbook generation capability. Although it is not the only assistant, meaning Lightspeed is not the only assistant out there which can do that, but the secret ingredient here is the combination of the specialized training specifically performed for Ansible on top of the IBM Foundation model, and complementing that with the Red Hat's own best practices. This allows end users to generate the whole Ansible playbook based upon a complete problem statement, which is far more accurate and following the best practices, which is missed in other systems out there. Let me show you how to generate the full playbook. On the left-hand panel, you see when you click on this Ansible extension, there is an option called Ansible Content Creator. Just click on that and click on this link where it says Playbook with Ansible Lightspeed. Okay, that's where we are right now. So let me close the tab which are not needed. So this is their chat window where you can write the complete problem statement. So if you notice, they have some examples. Let's use those examples initially. So you're saying create an IIS website on the port 8080 and port 8081 and open a firewall. Let's analyze that. Let's see what happens. Now, if you notice here, it has actually divided into two prompts as expected. And if you want, you still have an option to customize it further. Let's say if the chunking is not as per your expectation, you can always edit it. Now, next step is to generate a playbook. Now, if you notice, the whole playbook is generated. If you analyze it a little bit, because create an IIS website on port 8080 and 8081 and open firewall, this was basically your problem statement. So it used it as a name of the play. And since I'm running on Windows, it's automatically added host Windows. And also since IIS servers are actually Windows based, it automatically understood that context. Now, if you notice here, it's creating IIS website in port 80 and 81. It's running it in a loop. It's using the WinIIS website module. Then it's opening a firewall. It's a pretty recent code based upon what we have asked. If you want to add more complex stuff, you can do that. Now, as soon as I click open editor, it should actually save it in an editor. So I will not do that right now. So let's go back and let's try another example, whatever they have given here. Here it's actually creating a T2 micro EC2 instance for AWS Cloud using an image ID, AMI, which is, I don't know what AMI it is, but it is an image from which then that EC2 instance will be spun up. It's going to be started in the East US1 region with that tenancy using that subnet. Those are already pre-created with the public IP and the key name as test server, which is also pre-created with the security group SSH servers and so on and so forth. Let's analyze. Now, if you notice here, they understood the context. If you see here, it said in region this, with tenancy this, using this. So one thing which I noticed here is nowhere in its prompt it has mentioned anything related to T2 micro, nothing about image, nothing about tenancy. So I don't know how it's going to generate a playbook based upon this information. I was hoping it would capture all of this, but it did not. But let's see what happens. Okay, so looks like the prompts with which it generated did not have those details, but the final playbook which was generated, it was still respecting the user's input actually, which is good, but a little bit confusing, right? So now on this note, I'm going to show you another feature here about the feedback, because this is a perfect opportunity to basically convey the feedback back to the Red Hat that in the second step, there was a little bit confusion for the end users, right? So in second step, when problem statement is chunked into separate prompts, it did not show users specific information like image ID, tenant ID, region, etc. So this can be a confusion for end users, and they might duplicate the effort of updating the prompts, right? So this is technically, I think it's confusion. I was confused in that, and I could have edited it, but I still attempted generating it. So I'm going to say this is actually a bug report, according to me. It has a tendency, or I should say, maybe, I don't know, maybe not a bug report, but a suggestion feedback. Okay, let's try again with my own stuff. So I'm going to not just believe on their existing prompt, which I'm pretty sure they have tested many times. I'm going to write my problem statement here. So my intent is to automate like a deployment of a multi-tier web application which I'm writing. And I don't want to rely on any external inventory or configuration file. It should dynamically assign roles based upon the host names for 3 servers, like a Postgres database server, a Python Flask application server, and an Nginx front-end server. And this playbook should take care of installing necessary packages, configuring the database, cloning correct repositories, set up a virtual environment, set up the services, configure the Nginx, reverse proxy, all the configuration file. This is what we do in our day-to-day basis. Like we get a problem statement, we work with our developers, we say, okay, this is what you need to do. And they start researching, they start searching Google, and based upon their existing components, they build a playbook and then they test, right? So let's put this problem statement here and see what happens. Ooh. Okay, let's see. Let's validate. Install packages, yes. Again, that's the same confusion I have that, okay, although I'm mentioning packages, it's not detailing out that in the prompt, but I'm still assuming that like the previous example, it has somehow captured those packages in its memory. Then configure Postgres SQL. Maybe they're doing it for making the output more cleaner. That is why they're keeping it simple, but maybe there should be a button here to say, okay, show me the details, what you're going to generate. Then cloning the repository, virtual environment, systemd, Nginx, enable. I think they covered everything what I told them. Let's see how the playbook looks like. Okay. So now they did yeah, that's what they're doing actually. So they're installing the packages. Now, one thing you notice, they assumed it's Python 3, but which Python is that, right? 3.10, 3.9, 3.11. Since we were not explicit enough, since I was not explicit enough, so it actually used the standard Python 3, which is the supported version these days. Then configure Postgres SQL, same problem. It's not a problem of the generation, it's a problem of the user like me who did not specify what version of Postgres I'm talking about, but it still did the job based upon what I asked. So let me actually change this prompt to say Postgres version 7, version probably 9. Okay, let's see what it does. Okay, let's see. All right. Now look at this, right? It actually used the Postgres 9 like I recommended. Again, I did not say 9.6, but probably that one must be a stable release of 9. So it picked up that version. But I guess if I specify 9.7, 9.8, if it's existing, probably it will choose that. Then looks like it did a decent job. It may not be a perfect playbook, right? But I think it's a good starting point. Probably I would say 70-80% of the work is already done. Now it's all about refining it further, and that's where our next feature is coming into picture, which is single and multitask manipulation. Let me talk about that. Basically, what does single task and multitask generation mean, and why do you need it if we have a full playbook generation, right? Full playbook generation generates everything, which is, I think, the starting point for you to go in, right? But after the things are generated, now, like I was going back and changing the story and saying, I mentioned that instead of Postgres, I said Postgres 9, right? You could actually do that within the playbook now by modifying the prompt, either a single prompt or you can write a prompt which is a multitask. So it will generate a section of a playbook. What that means is using natural language prompt, you can refactor your playbooks in a more granular way, and basically you can leverage prompt engineering to fine tune the results. Let me go back to the let's say if I want to say Postgres 10, and if I press enter, you will know. If I press enter, you notice the Lightspeed icon will start rotating, meaning it is trying to talk to the server WatsonX Code Assistant. Actually, it's trying to talk to the Lightspeed front end service, which will behind the scene will talk to the IBM WatsonX Code Assistant. So let's try that. You notice here at the bottom right. Okay, so it actually generated the version 10 code, and I can, if I press tab, it will accept the changes. If I press escape, it will ignore the changes. So this is what I was mentioning about refactoring a specific portion of a playbook. That's what we as developers do on a daily basis based upon the requirement, or maybe you have an existing playbook, some of the developer had written, or you have written, now a new requirement came in to do this. So you can actually work on a specific task, tweak it with the help of Lightspeed. Assistants like Lightspeed. So I'm not going to accept it right now. I'm just going to close it. So let's go back to our next feature, which is the content source matching. This content source matching is, I believe, a very critical feature, specifically for the big enterprises. They want to make sure these companies, these enterprises want to make sure that the code which is generated is free of any IP indemnity issues. And along with the code which is generated by Lightspeed, it also provides information about the potential sources, the content, basically the author, who's the author of it, and the relevant licenses, like whether it's MIT license, GBL license, Apache license, etc. So let's go back there and try that. Let me basically do that again. And let me take this example only, small one. Okay. Right. Now, if I click on the terminal screen, it showed me the same two tasks. And if I expand on this, it is actually telling me that it's fetching it from the community windows, which is like galaxy.ansible.com. And here is the path of the file. The license is GPL3.0 and score is this. It's actually showing me the score also. Like this was the matching score, the top scores, based upon which it came up with the playbook. Same way for the second task also. It fetched from top 3 sources. It's listing down the top 3 potential sources. They may not be the only one, but it's kind of like correlation between all these sources and generating the best output from it. Let's go to the next feature, which is post-processing capabilities. This is where Lightspeed offers the post-processing capabilities, which augments the IBM WatsonX Code Assistant and improves the quality and the accuracy of the code recommendations. Although I really like this feature, but I could not find any detail in any of the Red Hat documentation that what kind of post-processing they are doing. They claim about doing a lot of best practices, incorporating a lot of best practices, which makes it more accurate. But again, I would, as an end user, I would like to understand what are those best practices they are incorporating, and if there is a way for us to customize those post-processing or add our own additional rules, which could be very specific for my group or my company, it would make it more powerful feature for us. Nevertheless, I'm glad at least SMEs of Red Hat are doing some level of post-processing. Moving on to the next feature, which is another a very beautiful feature, which is like explanation of the playbooks in a simple, plain English language. So let's go back to the VS Code. Let's go back to the Ansible content creator, and I'm going to use my previous example again, big one. And once the code is generated, I'm going to ask Lightspeed to explain me the code. So why this is important? Meaning your code is okay, but let's say you're reading someone else's code, right? Your peer's code, or maybe your 2-year-old code. You want to understand it, right? Let's say there's a problem in a maintenance window. There's a problem, or some bug is happening. Some code is getting broken, right? So you want to really understand what's really happening. So this is a very quick way to do that. So once let's say the playbook is generated, if you click on this, if you right click on this, click on this button, explain the playbook with Ansible Lightspeed. I'm not sure if I don't know if I need to save the file, then it will generate or not, but let's see. Looks like something is happening. Oh, it did that. So if you notice here, it came up with a summary that this playbook deploys a web application to a server. It installed the necessary packages, configure Postgres, clone the repository. Then it even spoke about prerequisites, right? And then it's literally explaining all the 8 different tasks it did, like installing all the packages. This task, install the necessary package on the server, and it's listing down the package detail, then configuration of Postgres. So imagine, let's say you're reading someone else's code, your peer has left your team or left the company, and now you're tasked to basically manage that application. Now it's kind of like a self-service way of KT, right? You can actually do knowledge transfer yourself just by asking Lightspeed to explain you the code. This I feel is a extremely powerful feature. Plus, in the middle of the night, let's say you're trying to troubleshoot some problem, it is an easy way, like a pair programmer sitting with you, a developer sitting with you, acting like they have written the code and explaining you everything. So for me, it's a boon actually. Next up is the telemetry dashboard, which is an optional feature. By default, it is enabled. So if I actually take you to the settings again, I go back to the extension, and if I show you extension settings, in the extension setting, there is an option for telemetry. It is by default enabled, and there's some privacy statement which you should definitely review and make sure your legal and security team understands this. If you're using a cloud version of the service, and for this demo, I'm just using cloud version of the service, and I'm just using open source code. So this actually sends your actual prompts and your generated suggestions and your acceptance or rejections, all of that into the cloud-based servers. So you can disable it if you don't want it. But yes, you can always use the on-prem version of Lightspeed. It gives you information about, it stores information about the suggestions which are accepted, rejected, or ignored by the users, the user sentiment, and even it tells you the top 10 modules which are returned in the code recommendation. So let's try to go there and see. So this is what it is. It's basically showing how many times on, let's say, August 25th, the suggestions were ignored, rejected, accepted. It's only me, so you're seeing very less. I'm just playing around with it. And if you notice here, this is the user sentiment. I'm not sure what is the algorithm behind it, how they're doing it, but they have a way to detect that. Plus, they're also telling what are the top 10 modules returned as part of the code recommendation. This can give you a very decent idea of the playbooks, the module which playbooks are using. So there is one thing which they still don't have is the feedback loop, meaning yes, our generated prompts and suggestions and whether we accepted or rejected, definitely that went as a feedback, but that feedback is not being used, at least for our purposes, meaning whether they are using it to fine tune their further model, or can we control that? Can we do a supervised training based upon it? Those things are not available today. I hope that is something in the roadmap, which I'm not aware of, but that's one thing which I really want to be available in this software. Moving on. Next is the deployment types. Like I was initially saying, they do support 2 kinds of models. One is the on-prem deployment, which you can do it on your Kubernetes or OpenShift cluster. And that one has today, that one has a limited capability, which is also dependent on GPUs. There is no CPU version of it, but the cloud version, which I'm using for this demo, has full capability. So if your company allows you to use a cloud version, I think that's the best way to go. And again, another difference is the on-prem version. Why I'm saying it's limited capabilities because it uses the older model, Granite 3B, which is small. and the new version, which is 20B, which is extremely powerful. It's only available in the cloud version of it. That's all I had in terms of like a basic walkthrough of the Lightspeed assistant. It's a very promising assistant, especially because it's trained on Ansible, whereas other assistants are general purpose. The quality which is coming out of them is not as great as Lightspeed when it comes to the Ansible language. I also have a plan to showcase a second part of this demo, which will actually be covering the GitHub code bot, which is basically like a bot configured in GitHub, which scans your users' check-ins, and then it automatically opens a pull request. If it detects that, okay, there are some improvements can be done on this playbook. Same way, we'll also go through a model fine-tuning exercise where you can actually tune the existing Granite 3B and 20B models using your enterprise data so that the outputs or recommendations which are coming out are based upon your enterprise code base, right, which is more relevant for your use cases. Okay, that's all I had. We'll meet again soon in the second part of the demo. Thank you, everyone.